of defense is the structure of a normal skin portion, right? So over here, like our skin is made up of three layers, right? Our skin is made up of three layers, which are epidermis, epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis, right? Basically, these are the three layers of our skin: epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis, right? So let's look over here. Okay, basically epidermis is combination, or you could say like epidermis itself is combined with five layers. Like in epidermis there are other five layers. Like in epidermis is composed of five layers, which are basically the first layer is stratum corneum. This is stratum corneum. This upper layer is known as stratum corneum. Second, we have which is stratum lucidum. Basically, this is quite thick and is present on the on our in our foot. Basically, this stratum lucidum, and on the palm of our hand, like this skin is quite hard. So over there, this stratum lucidum is present, right? That skin is quite thick. Now, stratum corneum, stratum lucidum, then we have stratum granulosum. Basically this is known as granulosum because it has granules in its structure, right? So stratum corneum, stratum lucidum, stratum granulosum, then we have stratum spinosum. This is stratum spinosum. And second, fifth is stratum basal. So basically this is the last layer of epidermis. So basically our epidermis it's a combination of five layers: stratum corneum, stratum lucidum, stratum granulosum, stratum spinosum, and stratum basal, right? So this is the combination, like these five layers make epidermis, right? So basically in our epidermis there are four kind of cells. Let me write over here downstairs down. Let's talk about epidermis, right? Basically an epidermis, first we have is keratinized cells. Like we have keratin. Basically keratinized cells. Basically these are the dead cells, and they are tightly packed to each other. They are tightly packed to each other, right? Basically they have no intracellular spaces between them. No intracellular spaces between them, like between these keratinized cells. Basically these are dead cells, and they're tightly packed to each other, and they don't have any kind of intracellular spaces between them, right? Second, we have melanocytes. Basically these release a hormone which is known as melanin, which basically controls our complexity, like the color of our skin. If a body, like for example there's an individual whose color is quite fair, so it means the level of melanin in his body is very low, which controls our complexity, right? Third, we have which is basically Langerhans cells. Langerhans cells, basically they have macrophages. Langerhans cells, we have macrophages in these, right? Then we have basically T cells, right? Which are obviously used, like these Langerhans cells are used in acquired immunity, which these are basically used in acquired immunity. Okay, a thing to remember that this immunity, this first type of immunity is non-specific. First line immunity is non-specific, right? This is non-specific. Okay, this was epidermis. We are now done with the first layer, which is epidermis. Okay, now let's move above again and let's look into the dermis, right? Let's look into dermis, right? So in dermis, basically we have hair follicles. We have hair follicles. As you can see over here, these are the hair follicles. Then over here we have basically, yeah, we have sweat glands over here too. We have sweat glands. We have hair follicles. We have sebaceous glands too. Um, there are sebaceous glands over here. Let's see, basically. These are the sweat glands. Basically, these sweat glands produce a antifungal and antibacterial known as lactic acid. Okay, let me write over here. Okay, next layer which we have is basically the dermis, right? Basically, this dermis has hair follicles and they have basically sweat glands. They have sweat glands which basically produce lactic acid. That produce lactic acid, right? Basically, this lactic acid is antifungal and antibacterial, right? This lactic acid is antifungal and antibacterial. Basically, this sweat gland also produces an enzyme known as lysozyme, which basically degrades bacterial cell wall. Right, this lysozyme actually degrades the bacterial cell wall. Moreover, there are some sebaceous glands too. Sebaceous glands too. Basically, these produce fatty acid. Right, fatty acid. Basically, they produce sebum. So, what is sebum? Sebum is oily substance, right? This sebaceous gland basically produce oil, or you can say sebum, right? Basically, the pH of the skin is 3 to 5. Okay, why it has acidic pH? Like this is acidic. Why? Because of the presence of lactic acid and this fatty acid, right? Must remember fatty acid and this lactic acid, because of the presence of this fatty acid and this lactic acid, the pH is acidic, right? Now we have some nerve endings in the hypodermis too. We have, sorry, this in dermis basically. We have nerve endings, like we have receptors. We have receptors too. We, even though in epidermis there is no flow of blood vessel, like the blood is not provided, but here we have blood vessels. We have blood vessels in the dermis. We have nerve symbols. Okay, now let's talk about the third layer, which is hypodermis. Right? Let's talk about hypodermis. Basically, this hypodermis is the last layer, and basically it is made up of adipose tissue and connective tissue. Basically, this adipose tissue help in the insulation, and this connective tissue basically helps to join bone and muscle, right? This tendon, ligaments, and then we know that the blood is also kind of special connective tissue. So this hypodermis is for the adipose, like it is made up of adipose and all that, and basically it helps in the insulation. Let me show you the diagram too. Over here it is. Okay, this is dermis and this is subcutaneous layer, and in the end, like this is the hypodermis, right? This is the hypodermis. Now let's read this slide. Okay, this epidermis is relatively waterproof. Obviously, the water can't enter. Okay, prevents most bacteria, viruses, and other foreign substances from entering the body. Obviously, it is impermeable. Like this epidermis is impermeable, right? Produces a pigment melanin that gives human skin, hair, and eyes their color. As I said before, that epidermis has melanocytes which produce melanin, a hormone which basically controls the complexity, right? So this was the epidermis. Now let's look at the dermis. Basically, these have nerve endings, sense pain, touch, pressure, and temperature. Okay, nerve endings, as I said, there are certain receptors present in our dermis. For example, nociceptor, like which is known as pain receptor. We have chemoreceptors, we have mechanoreceptors, so we have photoreceptors. So these are the receptors. So in our skin, the chemoreceptors are present, nociceptors are present. Now we have sweat gland, produce sweat in response to heat and stress. Obviously, when we will be exposed to sun or exposed to warm place, or we will be feeling hot, obviously we will sweat. Like the sweat will be released from our body, right? There will be perspiration, right? Then we have sebaceous gland. Basically, as I said, this secretes sebum into hair follicle. Sebum is an oil that keeps the skin moist and salt. As I said, that there are sebaceous glands which produce sebum, or you can fatty acid, right? Now we have hair follicles which produce various types of hair found throughout the body. As I said, this is the hair follicle and which produce various types of hair and found throughout the body. Now we have fat layer. This like the hypodermis basically helps insulate the body from heat and cold, provides protective padding, and serves as an energy storage area. As I said, this helps with the insulation. It is made up of adipose tissue, right? So I hope this is clear to you, the structure of skin and how it has role in first line of immunity. If you have any kind of question, you can ask me in the comment section. We're very glad to answer you guys.